Hell yeah, motherfucker.
Movies with Ron.
We could put some of those sleep thing videos off of YouTube on there. There's like thunder and rain.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Or hey, get this.
Jorge.
Three brothers on a train.
It's called Three Brothers.
Three brothers on a train.
Three brothers on a train. Because there's one where it's train noise, and it's nothing. It's train noise for 10 fucking hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one where it's the elite cabin on a starship.
I've seen that one.
And all it is like...
You don't hear any.
Yeah, there's like no other noises. It's just...
They'd get in trouble for that, I think.
Really?
So I think Star Trek is the only one that does it. Somebody walking in
like
your
in
bedroom.
the background, you're going to hear like, motion doors opening.
Shh. This ship will self-destruct in 7 minutes.
One new message.
Okay.
Let's, we're recording.
This is too late, my friend. We already are.
When did we start?
We started
When did we start?
right after he said the thing that made you laugh.
Oh, okay. It's gone forever. You know what grinds my gears? Celebrities coming in and out of retirement. The fuck is that? We need to make some room. If you retire, fuck off. Like, it's not some game that you play. It's not a teeter-totter. If you're like, the most recent example is Hayao Miyazaki, who makes those...
What the fuck is that?
He makes those animes. You know, he's like the genius behind Studio Ghibli, which is like Spirited Away and Ponyo. Those like really philosophically powerful, like almost Disney caliber Japanese animation movies.
Our niece likes Ponyo.
Yeah, I know.
Was this, he went into retirement after Ponyo?
I don't know. It feels like he went into retirement like 8 months ago. And now he's like, making another movie. The only reason this should be happening is if he like decided to retire because, you know, all his movies are about like little girl whose world opens up for her. Dun, dun, dun. So like he retired. He's like 100 years old.
Yeah.
You know, if you retire, make room. You know, you can't like go and occupy the same space, okay?
Yeah, you old fucker.
He retires and he goes, he's like, I'm going to spend the rest of the time with my 19-year-old girlfriend who I'm going to open up the world for her. I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing that.
Are you?
And
Jesus,
and
Chris.
she's like, I'm pregnant. And he's like 100 years old and he's like, fuck. This just in, Hayao Miyazaki is out of retirement. And then right after he's done with this final movie, he's going to like keel over.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so this isn't real.
No.
Okay. I missed that bit.
That's the only way I would justify that, though. You're listening to Movies with Ron, the podcast where my older brother surprises me with a movie he saw because I don't go see him anymore. And he explains the whole thing to me from beginning to end. If you're listening right now, trust me, you'll like his versions better.
Yeah.
It's okay if you've seen the movie. It's okay if you haven't seen it. The experience is unique, so just trust me.
I still trust you.
All right. Sending Joker. This is from Lego Batman, which was last week for you listeners out there. Sending Joker to the Phantom Zone would have made an awesome Justice League movie.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't want to see a Justice League movie that's not that. Like, they're having problems with these DC movies.
Yeah.
They should just hire these Lego guys
I know.
to write those movies. That would be a cool fucking movie, and it would involve, like, first off, your favorite bad guy ever, the Joker.
Oh, yeah.
In that universe. And then it could involve, like, Phantom Zone, more enemies. It could involve all the, tie in all the team, the Justice League, you know? That would have been a fucking cool movie. And we only got to see it in Lego.
Yeah.
Man, All right. The Kong Skull Island director is doing a Metal Gear Solid movie.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how that's going to go down, but all right. Next up, female film protagonists have reached an all-time high in 2016.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, pretty cool, huh?
Get 'em,
Yes.
ladies. Do any of us have a favorite or not favorite female protagonist from 2016?
Everyone's talking about Arrival. It's a big one.
Well, she
Also,
was good in that.
When did that Mad Max movie come out?
I don't know,
2016?
man.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, Charlize Theron.
Charlize.
That was a good one.
She had.
Mad Max sure as hell wasn't the main character of that movie.
Nope.
I remember seeing pictures of her on the red carpet, bald.
Yeah?
Bald is beautiful. It's just she wore it. She wore it well. It was
Yeah.
like, go
She did.
do it, Charlize.
You know, talking about protagonists there, I always wondered why I liked this new Godzilla movie so much.
Yeah.
You guys seen it? I love it. It's
Wait.
one of those where if I'm walking by the doorway and it's on, I'm walking through the doorway and saying, turn it up. And I'm sitting down. Can't do that with a lot of movies.
Uh-huh.
For me. And I don't know why. It's kind of a shit movie, and it didn't get received very well. Godzilla, like 2014.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Bryan Cranston.
Uh-huh.
And everyone, like, disappoints you because he dies in the first 30 minutes. And, the protagonist is that kid from those Jackass movies. That guy runs around, tries to be a leading man. Quicksilver from Avengers.
He's from the Jackass movies?
What?
What is it? Jackass? Asshole?
You're talking
Kick-Ass.
about Kick-Ass,
Kick-Ass.
man.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
All right, the Kick-Ass movies. In Godzilla 2014, he's the protagonist. And it's like, you don't really like following him.
Yeah.
If he had died, Godzilla 2014, like, still would have gone on.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I love that movie, is it's more than, like, character. It's got so much.
So what, they tried to, like, make a Godzilla-type following deal there? Like, he's Shia LaBeouf.
No, it's just I'm just wondering why I like that movie so much, and the protagonist is shit, but like you don't have to care. You know, if he died, there's so much more of the movie left. If Batman died, you don't have Batman.
No.
If that kid in that movie died with his dad, I would still love that movie.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Next up. Movies that feature pencils as weapons have an average Rotten Tomatoes rating of 69.8%.
Yeah?
Not too shabby.
Pretty good.
And they have their box office profit is at least double the budget. Pencils as weapons. There you
Damn.
go.
Huh.
It's a little pearl for you.
There you go, John Wick 2.
People write in. What other numbers should we crunch? I want to hear more. I want to hear more secrets like that. Pencils as weapons?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just a random thing that pops up in news feeds. There's got to be more. You know, any ideas out there? Huh? movieswithron@gmail.com. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, @movieswithron. Get in contact. All right.
I am already feeling this fireball.
Gremlins 2, the new batch. Is there a pencil in there?
I don't know.
The Faculty, Evil Dead, The Dark Knight, Rock and Rolla, From Dusk Till Dawn, Fright Night, and that movie Stoker.
Oh, I just remembered the pencil was the weapon in Gremlins 2, the new batch.
Okay.
He was when he dressed up like Rambo and then made it into an arrow that he fired with a paper clip.
There you go.
Oh,
Nice.
That was a list. All feature fantastic pencil work.
last week you were talking about Stephen King's writing. Now there's all this country cooking in it,
Yeah.
and he sacrifices story for character development.
Right.
I recently started listening to the audio book of Stephen King's It.
Uh-huh.
I never read the book, okay? I just saw the miniseries. Now remember the scene where the only member of the Losers Club that didn't come back to fight it slit his wrists in the bathtub,
Uh-huh.
and his wife just walks in with a beer in her hand, and she's like, "Oh, so good. And then that scene's over, and you see he wrote it on the wall.
Uh-huh.
Well, in the book, I'm listening to it in an audiobook form, but there was like 30 fucking minutes of what's going on in his wife's head. Like, in a couple of weeks prior to him killing himself. And it all just leads up to her finding the body. And in the movie, she just screams and drops a beer.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah. I was like, Jesus. It was like talking about her like...
That was in Stephen King's drug days.
Yeah, man. It's her trying to get into an after party after prom and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Like remembering her life.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, if you're disappointed so far, oh, you got a long way to go.
All the scenes with Pennywise in them are cool as hell, though.
Yeah.
Because it's like not like the miniseries.
Oh, yeah.
Which is giving me a little sense of excitement for the new movie coming out.
Uh-huh.
Because they're saying Pennywise is played more like childlike in this new one.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Is he more like a child in the book?
So far, a little bit.
Oh.
He definitely doesn't strike me as a Tim Curry.
Oh, so this Power Rangers movie. Man, that's gonna fucking bomb.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And it looks like so many people tried so hard.
I know. I'm still glad they did it. You know?
I was scrolling through Facebook, and one of the spam posts is Power Rangers movie, and it's like the 10 differences between the Power Rangers movie and the old TV show. I was like, there better be a million fucking differences between that movie and the show. Like, oh man.
Yeah.
And they look like they tried so hard. But they had a good time. No one died.
Yeah.
Trying to start something. Trying to make some money.
Yeah.
Trying to participate.
I know.
Sorry, guys. To that film crew. Hey, let's make a recommendation. From 2009, Blood Creek.
Ooh.
Yeah. Rick,
yeah,
you ever seen Blood Creek, Rick?
Nah.
Oh, geez. When I saw this movie, and this is like the best time when you find like an obscure movie, something that like slipped through so many like underground passageways.
I can't believe we haven't recommended this yet.
Like it's a Joel Schumacher movie.
Uh-huh.
And most of the reason why nobody heard about it was because he was having fights with everyone else.
Yeah.
And this was like a problem movie.
Uh-huh.
And but it's got his like signature darkness. And he's a pretty good filmmaker, I think. Besides Batman. Very early Michael Fassbender role.
Yeah.
He plays the big bad guy.
He was amazing.
Plays the Freddy Krueger of the movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, fucking phenomenal. It's two brothers.
Two brothers.
It's a brother movie. One of them went missing, but he came back.
Yeah. He was the older brother from Prison Break.
Yeah, Dominic Purcell, who, if he had been born 20 years earlier, he'd be competing with like Stallone and Schwarzenegger and shit.
Totally.
Like he would have been an action guy.
Yeah.
We moved on from that, and he kind of like
missed the
fell
boat
by the wayside. Yeah. Also, the little brother, Henry Cavill, Superman.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, early role for him. These guys kick ass in this movie.
Yeah, they do.
It's kind of a brother movie. Older brother comes back and he's like, I was held in this shipping crate because this family was going to make me food for this monster.
Yeah.
And he's like, but I escaped. They team up, get their guns. They go out to that farm and they're gonna figure shit out. And that is the movie. The whole movie takes place on this farm. Okay, but the backstory is Michael Fassbender was a Nazi. He traveled to America in the early days when we didn't know that was a big deal. And because he's part of the occult Nazi secret section.
Yeah.
And in this family's basement is a glyph, like an old Norse symbol, and he uses it to wield magic. And so this is like a Nazi guy trying to be like a wizard.
Yeah.
All right, and this was back before World War II. What the brothers learn is that this family is still alive, and they've trapped Michael Fassbender down in the basement using kind of that same magic.
Yeah.
And but they have to feed him, and as long as they keep doing that,
He's trapped forever.
and the family lives forever.
Yeah.
And they're trapped on the farm just like that in like a time loop or warp, and just each other keeping the other one at bay. And these brothers break in and disrupt the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
Right? He gets released. All right? The family is trying to kill him. Eventually, the family gets on their side. Fucking Michael Fassbender, who's like, now he's wearing his black leather gloves. He's got his Nazi coat, you know, the signature Nazi coat.
Yeah.
But his face is all like demonic. And he like runs at super speed. He's got these claws that he slashes through everything. If he needs to take control of something, he kills it and he resurrects it, and it's now one of his soldiers.
Yeah, dude.
He ends up doing it with a horse. He ends up doing it to the people he kills on the farm, like the food and stuff. It's all about these brothers trying to kill him. You know, they opened the box, and so now they're the heroes. And fucking, it's a fucking nightmare, but it's an exciting nightmare of a movie.
It is, man.
It's so good, and it just slipped through, and then like I just found it like in a bargain bin one day, like at Walmart, and it was like fucking award worthy movie.
Yeah.
Super excellent horror, written by David Kaganich, who is also gonna write the Suspiria remake.
Yeah.
He's doing the Pet Cemetery remake
Oh, cool.
and the Creature from the Black Lagoon remake, all on his list of things he's doing.
All right, man.
Yeah, so like good storytelling,
Yeah.
powerful filmmaking. People didn't get along, but check out Blood Creek from 2009.
Oh, yeah. You are going to like it. Oh, shit, you guys. We got a tweet.
What?
Oh shit!
A really great tweet.
Really?
I mean, we get tweets, but like this one, oh, mama.
Who's it from?
Alan Rundle at Del Bucko. And he says, at Movies with Ron, best podcast I've listened to. And I once listened to a podcast that was porn. Well, I say once. How about that, guys? Movies
Yeah.
with Ron, better than porn.
Alan, thank you so much. You're the best, man.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
Better than porn. Good lord.
Yeah.
And I love porn.
Everybody loves porn.
We'll put that on a T-shirt.
Everybody loves porn, or or movies with Ron, better than porn.
There you go.
I can dig it.
I like it.
Ron,
Yes.
last week you were talking about going to see a specific movie.
Yes.
What was it? Get Out? Get Out? Was it?
Yeah,
Get out.
Get Out.
I was excited about this movie.
Did you go and see it?
Yeah.
Hey, because I know a lot of movies came out this week. Well, yeah, some possible choices came out this week.
Like what?
I was trying to figure out which one.
Could have gone to see The Great Wall.
Nah.
I've only seen one preview to this movie. I barely know what it's about.
You saw the preview to this and you don't know what it's about?
Well, kind of, sort of. There's like a couple, and something crazy happens.
I heard it was a blend of, is it Look Who's Coming to Dinner and Stepford Wives.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, weird. Okay. Anything interesting happen in the theater?
A whole lot of hooting and hollering. There was some raucous applause in this movie.
Yeah.
So it was good?
Oh yeah, it was good. It actually had a like a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all about race, okay, in a horror setting.
Huh?
That's the director Jordan Peele has chosen to make a social commentary on race through a horror setting, you know, and that's a really great idea.
Wait a minute. Race? Like black and white, and Asian people, and all kinds of stuff.
Just black and white.
Just black and white. This could get sticky, fellas.
You seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine? Oh, there's the secretary. She's a comedian.
Yeah.
She's married to Jordan Peele. She's white, he's black.
Right.
And they recently got married, and then this movie came out.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling like it's close to his heart.
Uh-huh.
And there's a lot of awkwardness I'm sure he was exposed to.
Yeah.
And he funneled that into this like frightening adaptation of it.
Yeah.
And knowing that, I just wanted to see it even more.
Absolutely. So this movie had a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm like, dude, I have never really seen that. I don't think.
Yeah.
So, of course, I wanted to check that out. They even used that as part of the hype.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, having watched it, I'm like, hey, it was a good movie. It was a damn good movie. But I'm thinking like, well, what other movies have 100%? You know, like, is it that difficult to get to? Like, I'm thinking things like, you know, Saving Private Ryan, Forrest Gump, Toy Story 2,
Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I understand the cultural significance of this film. I definitely do. But I'm thinking, if I took all of the color out of this movie, and it was about all white people or all black people, would this be as hard-hitting of a movie?
Mm-hmm.
And guys, it would not. It would just be a horror movie.
Right.
You know? So I'm looking at this 100%, and I'm like, does this movie deserve 100%? And I'm not quite sure.
Uh-huh.
And I'm wondering if critics are just afraid to say anything negative about it.
Oh.
You know, I don't know.
I see what you mean.
What other movies have 100%?
All those, any movie you can imagine that would have 100%, I'll bet, was before Rotten Tomatoes was a site. Like, old movies? Rick, you got anything?
Okay, I started looking this up as he was saying it, and the first thing that pops up in the Google search engine is Rotten Tomatoes Get Out 100. And there's articles. Okay, but I have found the list. Citizen Kane is 100%. The Third Man, 100%. That's 1949. All About Eve, 1950. Singing in the Rain, North by Northwest. Repulsion, 1965. The Maltese Falcon. Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938. Rear Window, 1954. It goes on and on. These are
All
These are all
100s?
like old classics.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm looking for.
This is the first one that got 100 right off the bat. Like, no movie these days can be considered that perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, really, who am I to argue? I did love the movie. I really did.
Uh-huh.
There's nothing in the year 2000s that rates at 100%. Good Lord. 1999. Toy Story 2, 100%.
Oh, I knew it.
So what score should it have gotten?
Definitely a high one. It was a great movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never rate movies, so
80s or 90s, you know?
yeah. Oh yeah, definitely a very high one. But 100%, I don't know. You're telling me like Forrest Gump and Saving Private Ryan didn't get 100%, but Get Out did.
I'll say that those movies, Forrest Gump, Saving Private Ryan, well, they have Tom Hanks.
And he's
But al-
gold.
But also, he's a treasure. If you put him in a museum, Nicolas Cage would try to steal him.
Oh yeah.
Those have had time to age well, and we realized in hindsight we were right all along. Get Out doesn't have that advantage.
Not Forrest Gump, man. That was an instant hit.
No, that's what I'm saying. But sometimes stuff is an instant hit, and then it doesn't age well.
Yeah.
But, that's the test of Get Out, is time.
Very well. I'll take it.
Oh, I'm sorry. There is a 2000s movie that is 100%, and it is Man on a Wire.
Really?
Is that
That
Gordon Levitt movie?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Man, all right.
3D
You know what?
crap,
All bets
tightrope
are off.
shit.
All bets are off. I'm done
Oh,
talking
God.
about it.
All right. Let's start the movie. Got my popcorn and my soda.
So this is a Blumhouse film. So I saw a preview to a new Blumhouse film called It Comes at Night. Look that trailer up. Looks pretty good.
All right. It comes at night.
Also, The Belko experiment. You guys heard about this?
I have not.
It is described as Battle Royale meets Office Space.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's this office building full of office workers. And then all of a sudden, there's these shutters that close the whole building in. And then they're like, all right, there's 30, or I don't know, there's a whole bunch of you. In the next 2 minutes, if 30 of you are not dead, 60 of you will be killed.
Jesus.
Yeah. In 2 minutes.
Jeez.
It's probably going to be worth a watch. All right, everybody ready for Get Out on Movies with Ron?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, so it just immediately opens up with a quiet suburban street at night. You know, the streets are abandoned, and there's nobody out on them except for this one lone black guy. And he's walking down the street, and he's on the phone, and he's talking. He's like, yeah, I don't know where it is, man. I don't know. You know, why would somebody name a street Edgewood Street and then put it like 1 block away from Edgewood Avenue? Mm-hmm. You know, I don't understand. He's like, it's fine, I'll find it. And then he hangs up the phone. And as he's just walking down the street, this white Porsche drives past him, and then it makes a U-turn, and it starts following him. And he's just walking, so it's going real slow, and it's creeping behind him, and he's like, oh, man, come on. You know, what the hell's going on here? And it's just like keeping pace with him. So he's like, man, screw this. And he just turns around and starts walking back the other way. And then he turns to cross the street, and he looks behind him at the Porsche, and it is stopped, and the driver's side door is open, and there's nobody in the car. And he's like, man, what the hell is going on? And then he turns around, and he just gets attacked by some dude in black with a big black mask on.
Oh, jeez.
Who's just like either, you know, stabbed him or, you know, got him with a needle or something. Anyway, incapacitated him, like, immediately, and just drags him towards the Porsche and throws him into the trunk. Right after that, all this, like, German Oompa music starts, like, boom, bam, boom, bam, boom, boom, bam, boom, bam.
What the hell?
And it just says, get out. And we just see a shot of, you know, trees moving past. So as soon as the opening credits are over, we settle into what appears to be like a photography exhibit. And it's a bunch of black and white photos of, like, you know, life in the city. And we learn that it is the apartment of our main character, Chris, played by Daniel Kaluuya. And there's a little sequence of him shaving while this girl, Rose, is, like, at the bakery getting breakfast, okay? And then she comes and she knocks on his apartment door, and he lets her in. And we find out that they are leaving this morning to go visit her parents. He's packing his stuff, and she's like, hey, is something wrong? And he's like, do they know I'm black? And she's like, what? No. You know, I don't talk about it like that. You know, oh, whoa, Mom and Dad, I'm sorry, I'm dating a black man. She's like, they're not racist. It's fine. You know, I mean, my dad, he would have voted for Barack Obama for a 3rd term if he could have, and he will tell you that. But only because he's like a lame dad. All right? So they're in the car, and it's a long drive, and he pulls out a pack of cigarettes. And she's like, oh, come on, no. And he's like, oh, come on, I just need one. And then she takes it from him and throws it out the window. So she obviously doesn't like his smoking. Here, pour me some Fireball. So he calls his buddy Rod, who was a TSA agent. And he's like the comic relief of the movie.
What you got there?
Shot a Fireball?
All right.
Here's to you.
Let's do it. Cheers. Freshly squeezed. From the glands of a
demon from hell.
A wholesome dragon.
So his buddy is on the phone, and he's like in his TSA uniform, and he's like, oh, man, I was just frisking some old lady, and I got in trouble for it. Like, old ladies can hijack planes, too. What the hell's going on here? Anyway, he finds out where his buddy Chris is going, and he's like, man, I'm warning you, don't go to your white girlfriend's parents' house. And Chris is like, nah, man, it's going to be fine. He's like, I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you. And then on the road, boom, they hit a deer.
Oh, shit.
So they screech to a halt, and they get out of the car. There's all this blood on the front of the car, and the mirror's all torn off. And they're standing there like, oh, my God, are you okay? You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. And then Chris hears the deer, like, in the woods. going like, and it was like, yeah.
Jeez. Was he driving?
No, she was driving.
Oh, okay.
And that matters here in a second here. So Chris goes and investigates this this dying deer, and he's just like sitting there staring at it. And it's like, one of its legs is like, I don't know, torn open or something, and it's just like laying there, dying. Ugh. And he's just like staring at it. Because remember, he's a photographer. All those pictures we saw, they were his. So I guess he's just like staring at the irony of life or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's looking all forlorn at it. Then this cop shows up. I guess they called him. And he's like, yeah, from now on, you're going to need to call animal control for this kind of thing. Now, sir, can I see your driver's license, please?
Oh.
And he looks up, and then Rose says, why? I was driving. I've already told you that. I'm the one who was driving. And he's like, well, yeah, I didn't ask if he was driving, ma'am. I asked to see his identification. And he's like, well, I got state ID, And she's like, no, this is bullshit,
Uh-huh.
He had nothing to do with it. And Chris is just like, babe, it's fine. It's fine. Like he's used to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so he just gives the guy his license anyway. And there's like radio dispatch is like, Officer so-and-so, do you have a problem?
Aw.
And he's like, looking at Rose. And he just says over the radio, no, everything's fine here.
Oh, man.
So then he leaves and they're back on the road. The car's, still drivable. And he's looking at his girlfriend like, yeah. And she's like, what? And he goes, that was hot. So then they get to the parents' house. And as they are driving in to the estate, because it's like, they're rich.
Yeah.
Okay. And they drive past a black groundskeeper who's just out there raking leaves and stuff. And he's just like looking at them in the car as they're driving past. And she just goes, yeah, that's the groundskeeper. And then the guy waves at them. And Chris is just like, Chris looks at everything in this movie like, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Like very distrustful. Anyway, the house is really nice. And I'm guessing it was about here that I realized I had to pee. And we are no, we've been talking for a while. We're only like 5 minutes in the movie.
Yeah.
All right. And I was like, man, 100% Rotten Tomatoes, racially significant. I don't want to miss any of this. Okay? So I went ahead and I made the decision to just hold it. Okay? I've never left the theater before, since we started this show.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, you know what? I'll be fine.
All right.
That is a task, my man.
So then, he meets the parents, and they're played by Catherine Keener and Bradley Whitford. Bradley Whitford, if you might remember, is the ratty little bastard on Billy Madison.
Yeah.
Also, I suppose he was in some unheard of show called The West Wing. I don't know.
He was amazing in The West Wing. And I love that actor.
But he will always be the ratty bastard from Billy Madison to me.
Well, the best was from Cabin in the Woods with that other actor who was equally great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
They did good.
Business ethics.
Big role.
Yeah. I mean, he was the father of the family, And now remember, he's older. He's got a big bushy beard. Okay. And he's like a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Chris walks up and he's like, hey, come on. We're huggers. Come on now, my man. He says that a lot to him.
Oh.
And they're like, oh, we're so glad you're here. And then they go into the house, and then the camera pans back, and we see the groundskeeper is just staring at them. So they're like, yeah, sorry, we hit a deer on the way here, and that's why we're a little late. And the dad, this is like probably the one thing about this movie that was like really blatantly obvious. He's just like, oh, yeah, deers. I'm telling you, I hate them. I say good riddance. The deers are taken over, and they need to be culled, and taken out. So if you say you killed a deer, I say that's a good start. Okay. And it was like really blatantly an allegory for what is happening in the film.
Okay.
But we move on, and then he looks at him and he's like, "So," the dad is saying, "How long has this been a thing?" And Chris looks up like, "What, man?" And he's like, 4 months. And he's like, all right, well, this is my wife, Missy. She's a prominent psychiatrist, and Turns out the dad is I don't remember his name, but he's like a neurosurgeon. So they're rich. Dad's giving him a tour, and he's showing him all of his souvenirs from around the world, all the different places he's been, and he like makes a point to show him, oh yeah, this is my father. He was an Olympic runner, and he actually got beat by Jesse Owens in the Olympics right in front of Hitler. You know, he came in second or whatever. And then Chris is like, oh wow, that's amazing. That's history. You know, he's like, yeah. I just love it that Jesse Owens just like stood up and proved those Nazi bastards wrong, you know, right in front of them. And Chris is like, yeah. Probably pretty disappointing for your dad, though.
Yeah.
And then he goes like, yeah, he almost got over it. He's giving him the tour. You know, this is my office. This is her office and everything. This is the basement. We had to seal it up because of black mold, so no one goes down there. Anyway, this is where you're going to be sleeping and stuff. And he's like, you know what, Obama? I would have voted for him for a third term if I could have. You know, he was just the best president in history as far as I'm concerned. And Chris just goes, I agree. So they're all sitting down talking, and, you know, they're getting to know their daughter's boyfriend. They find out that his parents are dead. I don't know if he ever knew his dad, but his mom ended up dying when he was a little boy. So as they're sitting there, he's like nervously ticking his hand on the table. And then the wife is like looking at it and then looking back up at him and just staring at him. And then the dad goes, do you smoke, Chris? And Chris goes like, oh man, is it that obvious? And they're like, yeah, you know, it's all right. It's a pretty disgusting habit though. And he's like, yeah, no, I am totally trying to quit. And the dad's like, yeah, you know, you should have Missy help you with that. He's like, what are you talking about? Oh, she invented a way to help you quit smoking. It's worked on everybody. It worked on me. I'll tell you what, I smoked 1,000 cigarettes a day, blah, blah, blah. And ever since she hypnotized me, every time I think about it, I just want to throw up. He's like, you want to do it? And Chris is like, I'm good. And the mom's like, yeah, don't worry about it, you know, whatever. It is a very nasty habit, though. So we find out that this weekend they're having a big party in honor of Rose's grandfather's birthday. I mean, he's like dead and gone, but they still do it every year for like all of their friends and all his old friends. As they're sitting there, the housekeeper comes up to pour some iced tea for everybody. You know, she's just a young black lady, and she looks a little spacey-eyed, you know. Maybe something's up with her. You know, there's obviously a little something weird about the groundskeeper. You know, he's just staring at him. She's also a little blank-eyed. So she's pouring the iced tea for everybody, and as she's pouring Chris's, she just stares off into space. And then his tea overflows, and she ends up spilling something. And the mom is like, you know what? Why don't you just go lay down? Yes, thank you. Thank you, I think I will. And then she leaves, and Chris is just looking like, man, what the hell? And then Rose's brother arrives, who is played by an actor that I absolutely loathe. And his name is Caleb Landry Jones, playing Jeremy in this movie. He was Banshee in X-Men The Last Stand. Nope, the First Class. Some redheaded weirdo. Played the boyfriend in Byzantium.
All right. I can see why you'd think that. All right. He's an asshole?
So as soon as I saw him, I was like, okay. All right. Jordan Peele knows what he is doing. I saw him and I was like, Jordan Peele cashed him. Because he wanted me to hate him.
Yeah.
And ding. They're all having dinner and he's telling embarrassing stories about his sister. Like, hey, she showed you her toenail collection. And Chris is like, what? Man, that's disgusting. And he's like, oh, yeah, she did it for real. You know, and he tells him a story about they were having some party, and it was her first French kiss, and she accidentally bit off the tip of the dude's tongue.
Ugh.
Yeah. And then he gets all weird, and he's looking at Chris, and he's like, do you like MMA? And the dad goes like, whoa, man, all right, Jeremy, just chill. You know, and he's like, what? I'm just, you guys got to know him. I want to get to know him. And he goes, you mean like UFC? He's like, yeah. Do you like that stuff? He's like, no, I did some jujitsu when I was a kid, but, no. And then Jeremy's like, yeah, okay, yeah. Why don't you stand up? Jeremy's like also a little drunk, okay? And the parents are like, whoa, all right, no. I told you, no fighting in the house, no play fighting. He's like, I wasn't going to hurt him. I didn't do anything. So the mom like just shuts it down and makes Jeremy go to his room or whatever because he's drunk. Then we got Rose and Chris in their bedroom, and Rose is complaining about her family. She's like, oh my God, he wanted to put you in a headlock and shit. Like, I can't believe that. And what's up with my mom being so mean to the maid, And, geez, I don't know. Maybe you were right. Maybe they're racists. And he's like, it's fine, babe. I'm totally used to it. It's fine. It's not a problem. Everything's going to be fine. So then they make out a little bit, and then it cuts to nighttime. And Rose is asleep, and Chris can't sleep. Remember, Chris is a smoker.
Yeah.
So he's like staring at the ceiling and looking over at his backpack at the cigarettes.
Uh-huh.
He's also remembering the deer. So he like gets up, and he's like walking through the house, and it's nighttime, so everything's blue. So then we get our first jump scare, and all it is the maid walking across the hallway. But the music goes, ring! So then he goes outside, and he's like just looking around the backyard, and it's huge. They have acres and acres of estate. All right? And he's looking off into the darkness, and there's just dark trees, okay? And then all of a sudden, out from the darkness comes running at full speed the groundskeeper. And he's still wearing all of his his jacket and his hat. Mm-hmm. And he's just like running at full speed straight at Chris.
Jesus.
Okay, and Chris is like, what? And he like backs up a little bit, and then just when the groundskeeper is about to like run right into him, he just like sharply turns to the right and he just keeps running. Okay, and it's like the weirdest shit. All right, and he's like, man, what the fuck? And he turns around, and he sees the maid up in the house with the lights on, and she's just like staring at him out the window. So then we see inside the house, and we see what the maid is actually doing, and she's just looking at her own reflection. Okay, and she's just like looking into her own eyes, looking at her face. And you're just like, what the fuck? Like, why? Okay, all right. Why are the black people so weird?
Yeah.
All right? Which is exactly what Chris is thinking. So then Chris walks back inside, and as he's passing by Missy, who's sitting in her office, she goes, hey. And he's like, oh, yeah, sorry. And she's like, do you smoke in front of my daughter? He's like, I'm trying to quit. I promise I'm quitting. She's like, you know how dangerous it is? She's like, come in here, sit down, talk to me. Everybody else in the house is asleep. And he's like, oh, okay. And she's sitting there, she's got some tea in a teacup. She's stirring it with a spoon. And she's like, do you want to know how it works? And he's like, what? She's like, the hypnosis, I can totally cure you of wanting to smoke. And he's like, yeah, how do you do that? And she's like, well, I just I talk to you and I watch and I wait until you're in a state of heightened suggestibility. And he's like, heightened suggestibility, huh? She's like, yeah, and then I'll, then I do the rest. She's like, he's smoking in front of my daughter. That's my kid. All right. And she's getting all stern with him. And he's like, yeah, I know. I promise I'm quitting. She's like, well, what about your mother? And then he like bristles up and he's like, yeah, she died. She's like, yeah, where were you when she died? You were a little boy. Where were you? He's like, I was at home, and he's getting all weirded out. She's like, what were you doing? I was just watching TV. And what was she doing when she died? Yeah, she was coming home from work. It was night. She's like, yeah, okay. So then when she didn't come home, what did you do? And he goes, nothing. She's like, nothing? Well, what were you doing? I just kept watching TV. And he's like, his eyes are turning red because he was like, I really don't want to talk about this. She's like, oh, I understand. So, so you did nothing. Do you remember anything else? Like, what kind of a night was it? And he's like, it was raining. She's like, do you remember the sound of the rain? He's like, yeah, sometimes. She's like, remember it now and tell me when you have it. He's like, and then his eyes start to water up. And like now we see the flashbacks of him, just this little boy sitting on a bed watching television in the dark. And apparently his mother died, was hit by a car or something, coming home from work.
Yeah.
So his eyes are watering up, and she's stirring her tea still with the spoon, and it's going like, and he's like, I have it. I can hear the rain, and now we, the audience, can hear the rain. And she's like, oh, that's good, that's good. How do you feel? And he's like, scared. And she's like, yeah, I bet. But you still did nothing. You didn't call anyone or anything like that? He's like, no. I just watching TV. She's like, oh, okay. How do you feel now? And he's like, I can't move. And she's like, oh, yeah. He's like, why can't I move? Why can't I move? She's like, you're paralyzed. Just like you were when you were a little boy, when your mother was dying, and you did nothing.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's like real serious. And he's like, oh, God. Like he is full on like silently crying now. And then she just goes, now sink into the floor. And he goes, what? Wait. She goes, sink. And then Chris sinks down into the floor.
Jesus.
Okay? As the little boy who's sitting on the bed watching the TV, the boy just disappears into his bed. Yeah. Okay? And it's just like falling through space. And now we see that the kid falling through space is Chris. Okay? Now, from Missy's point of view, Chris is still just sitting right in front of her. But now he is like bawling, crying. Yeah. But from his point of view, he is lost in space and he's like floating in darkness. And he can just see this small window in front of him with Missy's face in it. And she's like, yeah, there you go. And she says, now you're in the sunken place. And then she just stands up. And he's like, off in space, floating. And he's like waving his arms and he's trying to scream and he's not making any noise. And then she just walks up to Chris and uses her thumbs and closes his eyes. And then the window that he sees closes.
Ah, shit.
And then he wakes up in his bed next to Rose. He's like, oh my God. He's like all sweaty and stuff. And it was like the worst nightmare ever. So then he like leans over and he looks at his cell phone and it's dying. It goes like bing. And so he plugs it into charge. And then later on that morning, he's walking around the woods. He's taking photos and stuff. And, he's kind of using his viewfinder to, as like binoculars, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then he sees the maid up in the window again. And he's looking at her and he sees that he looks through his camera and sees that she's looking at herself in the mirror, just like staring at her own reflection again, kind of fixing her hair and stuff. And then all of a sudden she just turns and looks at him. And the music goes, round. And he's like, oh, and he just like, points his camera the other way. Tries to recover real quick, And then we hear some pounding noises and he looks over to the left and sees that the groundskeeper is over there splitting wood for firewood. He walks up to him and he's like, sup, man? Good to see you around here. Are they working you good, man? Groundskeeper looks at him and is like, oh, well, nothing I don't want to be doing. He's talking really, really white as opposed to how Chris talks, Yeah. He's like, oh, sup, man, And he's totally weirding Chris out. And he's like, yeah, well, my name's Chris. And he's like, I know who you are. It's like, oh, okay, do ya? He's like, she is a beautiful girl, isn't she? He's like, who, Rose? He's like, yes, a real keeper. Like, talking just like that. Uh-huh. And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, I'm very sorry about last night. It was my exercise. I didn't mean to frighten you. He's like, yeah, okay.
Jeez.
Then the guy's like, so, did it work? What? He's like, you were in Missy's office for quite a while.
Wow.
And he's like, you know what? I really don't remember, to be honest. So I really don't know. And then the guy's just like, well, I'd better get on with my work and mind my own business. It's like big toothy smile. And then Chris is walking away from him, and he pulls out a cigarette, and he looks at it, and then he puts it away.
Yeah.
And he's talking to Rose, and he's like, okay, I think your mom hypnotized me last night. And Rose is like, what the fuck? You know, what are you talking about? He's like, you know, I'm just saying, like, every time I think about smoking now, I want to throw up, okay? And the groundskeeper, Walter, I don't know, what's his deal anyway? He was, like, kind of hostile towards me. She's like, well, what was he saying? He's like, nah, it wasn't what he was saying. It was how he was saying it. Like, I think he might like you.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, what? Are you fucking with me? He's like, no. She's like, so you think maybe I got a chance then? And he's like, oh, yeah, that's great. That's great. You got jokes. You got jokes. And she's laughing at him. And then it cuts to the guests arriving for the party. Okay, and they are all of them hoity-toity, rich, old white people. Rose is walking around introducing him. And there's this old guy. He's like, I used to be a golfer. He's like, oh, wow, that's really nice, you know? And the guy's like, yeah, you know, it must be wonderful having such a physical advantage. And Chris is like, what? He's like, yeah, you know, I'm not really too spry anymore. Oh, but I'll tell you what, I do know Tiger. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay, that's great. You know Tiger Woods because I'm black. That's cool. And then that guy's just like, so let's see your form. Because he was like, you know, have you ever played golf? And Chris was like, once. The guy's like, let's see your form. And then she's introducing him to some old lady, and the lady's like, oh, wow, isn't he just so handsome? And Chris is all embarrassed and sheepish. So then she, like, just reaches out and is just, like, feeling his bicep. This old lady. And she's just like, wow, oh, yes. She looks at Rose and goes, so, is it true? And Rose is just like, what? And then the lady says, is it better? And then it just cuts to somebody else, you know, talking to him like, oh, yes, you know, we work in the fashion industry or something, and definitely black is back in fashion. It's back in fashion for sure. And Chris is just like, embarrassed and awkward and uncomfortable. It's like just as awkward as anybody thought it was going to be.
This is insane.
Yeah. So then he's like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to take some pictures. And then he's just walking around with his camera. He's taking some pictures of the partygoers and stuff. And then he's using it as binoculars again. And he's just like scanning the party. And then he sees her mom, and she's just like talking to some other person. And then he scans over and sees her dad, who is talking to a huge group of people and is in the viewfinder of the camera and just points directly at it and goes, there he is. It was a funny scene. Like he was talking about him.
Yeah.
So then Chris looks over at the buffet table and sees another black guy. He's an actual party goer. Okay. It's not one of the staff at the house.
Yeah.
And he walks up to him and he's like, oh, man, it is good to see you, man. It's so good to see another brother here. And then the guy just turns around and he's smiling at him, and he's wearing a hat, like a fedora, and he's wearing nice old country gentry clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just kind of staring blankly at Chris.
Oh, Jesus.
And Chris had said, oh, it's so good to see another brother here. And then he just goes, of course. And he's like, oh, my name's Logan. And then the guy's date at the party comes up, and she's like, okay, and the guy, Logan, he's like mid-20s.
Uh-huh.
And his date walks up, who is like obviously 60 years old. 60-year-old white lady. And she's like, Logan, so-and-so wants to meet you. They want to meet you over here. Now come on. And he's like, oh, well, Chris was just telling me how much more comfortable he is with my being here. And she's like, oh, that's nice. That's good. And he's like, well, I'd better go with her. It was nice to meet you, Chris. And then Chris holds up his fist for a fist bump. And then Logan just grabs his fist with his hand and shakes it. And walks away. So then Chris just says, man, what the fuck? I would like to remind you that I still had to pee. I'm like, okay,
geez.
all right, it's okay. This is going to be a rough one. This is going to hurt when we're done. But yeah, this is an important movie. I need to see it. All right, it's fine. Like, I bought a drink when I walked in, didn't drink a drop.
Ooh.
The whole movie long. So then Chris is walking around the party and he finds this old blind guy who's sitting in a bunch of chairs, a big group of chairs that's set up like a wedding. It's weird. In front of a gazebo. And it's just a blind guy sitting there with his cane. And it's played by Stephen Root. The guy who's going to burn down the building in Office Space.
Oh, yeah. The stapler.
Yeah. But he's like, he's old, he's blind, but he's older and he's rich. And he's real smooth.
He's good.
Yeah, he is good. Anyway, he's like, yeah, hey, what's going on, Chris? He's like, you know me? He's like, oh, of course I know you. I'm a big fan of your work. He's like, what the hell are you talking about? You're blind. He's like, well, I'm Jim Hudson. It's like, you're Jim Hudson? The famous gallery owner, the art dealer? And he's like, yeah, my assistant, he describes your work to me, and it's very powerful. Well, at least I think it is. He's like, I think you have a really wonderful eye, for what you do, and I am a huge fan of your work. And he's like, wow, okay, how did you... He's like, how did I go blind? Yeah, life is a big, huge, sick joke, isn't it? Okay. I dabbled in taking photos like you do. And I must have sent, hundreds to National Geographic before I realized that I just didn't have the eye, for the work. And so then I just started dealing, and it wasn't long after that I started to lose my sight from some genetic disorder, And Chris just goes, man, shit ain't fair. He's like, yeah, shit is not fair. So then the party has now moved inside of the house. And everybody's in there talking and mingling and stuff like that. There's like maybe, 50 to 100 people there, actually. And Chris just walks into the house. And then he's like, dunk, 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 runs upstairs. As he goes upstairs, everybody in the party just stops talking and looks up. Like they're listening. Okay? Listening to whatever he's doing upstairs. And you are like, man, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
Everybody at this party just is like, oh yes, talking. Stop.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
All at once, okay? And they're all just like, with their faces turned towards the ceiling, listening for Chris. So then Chris, he doesn't know that that's happening. He walks into his room, and he goes over to his phone and finds that it is unplugged.
Oh,
remember, he plugged it in to charge earlier. And it's dead because it, didn't get charged. So he's looking around, and he sees the housekeeper walking around upstairs. He goes to Rose, and he's trying to explain it. He's like, I think she picked up my phone, babe. I think she was going through my phone. And she's like, what, why? Why would she? And he's like, because she doesn't want me being with you for some reason. I don't know, but it's really weirding me out. She's like, you know what? That's it. I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something to my parents about what she's doing. And he's like, yeah, you know what? No. It's all good, okay? Just, I don't want to get her in trouble. It's fine. Mm-hmm. Then he ends up, charging his phone a little, and he calls his buddy Rod back home. He's like, yeah, man, I got hypnotized. And he's like, man, what the fuck are you talking about? He's like, yeah, it worked. Like, I don't want to smoke. And then Rod is like, motherfucker, how are you not scared? With that shit. Fuck that. You know how much white people love making sex slaves? They could make you do anything you want. Bark like a dog, suck a dick. You never know it. Jeffrey Dahmer, you remember him? White dude. People were going over at his house to suck his dick. You know what they did? Suck his dick. But you know what they didn't do? They didn't do it while their heads were still attached to their bodies.
Oh my God.
And Chris is like, yeah, man, the black people here, they're weird too, man. And then Rod just goes, yeah, that's probably because they hypnotized. And right then the maid comes in and interrupts him. So he hangs up the phone. And Chris is like, what? And she's like, I would just like to apologize. I did lift your phone up because I was dusting the dresser. And as I lifted it up, the plug came out. And rather than keep meddling with things, I decided to just leave it as it was. And I'm very sorry for doing that. And he's like, oh, you know what? It's fine. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to snitch. And she's like, snitch? But she doesn't understand the word. And he's like, yeah, like tell on you. And then she goes, tattletale. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, oh, no. It's fine. It is not like that here. Not with the Armitages. And that's the name of the family. She's like, I don't answer to anyone. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, well, I'm just sorry anyway. Too many white people around and, I get nervous. And then the maid has this great scene where the camera never leaves her face and she just goes, oh, no. And then her eyes start tearing up. And they're like, tearing up? And she's like, fighting back tears. And she's like, no. No. And then she gets control. She starts laughing again, like fake laughing. And she's like, no. It's not like here. They treat us like family. And then she just leaves. And he's just standing there like, bitch is crazy. Okay. So then Chris walks outside, and the dad is introducing him to another group of people. And there's like this old Asian dude who's like, do you find it advantage or disadvantage being African American? That's like the shittiest question ever. And Chris is just like, fucking reflecting that. And he's like, geez. You know what? I'm going to throw that question over to Logan. Maybe he can help me out. And he's like, hey, Logan, they were just asking me about the African American experience. And, why don't you tell them what you think? And then Logan turns around, and he's wearing his hat, and he's got a big old smile on his face, and he comes over and he's like, well, I don't have a whole lot of experience with the African American experience, and to tell you the truth, these days, and he like looks over at his date, the woman that he's there at the party with. He's like, I don't really leave the house too much these days. And it's just like, oh my God. But while he's talking, Chris, who is like so fucking weirded out by this guy, he just like pulls out his cell phone and he's like holding it down near his waist, but he points it at him and he snaps a photo of him, but the flash goes off.
Jesus.
The second the flash goes off, Logan stops talking and he's just like staring straight ahead. And then his eyes have like this weird little like sparkle in them. Like the flash did something to his eyes.
Yeah.
And then he's like standing there and he starts to like lose his composure and he's looking at Chris. And then his nose starts bleeding. And he just starts yelling at him. He's like, get out, get out, get out, get the fuck out. And then Chris is just like, whoa, backing up. And then Logan attacks him.
Oh, shit.
Holy shit.
And he's just like grabbing him, and then everybody pulls Logan off of Chris and then carries him, back into the house somewhere. And Chris is just standing there like, dude, what the fuck? So now that everybody at the party is weirded out by Logan's outburst, they're all just like shitting inside, being quiet. And like Chris is sitting there with Rose. And then Logan and his date walk in. And Logan's like, I imagine I owe an apology to all of you. I am so sorry. But you know what? And Missy walked in with him as well. He's like, I'm so glad that I had you to calm me down, Missy. I'm so glad. And she's like, yeah, it's okay, And he's like, well, I am sorry to say that I am going to have to leave you all to go without my marvelous wit because the whole thing has just left me quite exhausted. And they're like, oh, no, it's okay. And he's like, I especially want to apologize to you, Chris. I didn't mean to scare you or startle you or anything like that. He's like, yeah, no, man, it's fine. It's all good. It's okay. So then he leaves. By this time, the pain is getting a little intense.
Oh, man.
Anyway, I guess someone blamed it on a seizure and that he had a seizure.
Yeah.
So then Chris is talking to Rose. He's like, my cousin is epileptic, okay? And that was not a fucking seizure. Or I don't know what that was. But it wasn't a seizure. She's like, yeah, well, my dad is a neurosurgeon, okay? And he says it was a seizure. And he's like, no. I don't care. That's not what that was. Mm-hmm. He's like, the weirdest thing though is like when he came at me, I don't know. It felt like I knew him. And she's like, what? What do you mean? He's like, I don't know. I just had this feeling of familiarity. What the hell's Your mom got in my head. Okay, your mom did something to me, and I don't like it. I don't like what's happening here. And she's like, no, you know what? Oh man, why did she have to do that? I am so sorry this is happening. And at this point, while this argument is going on, we see all of the rich white people out sitting in all of those chairs playing bingo. Uh-huh. Okay, and the person leading the bingo is Rose's dad. And he's like standing up and he's like holding up his fingers instead of like calling out numbers and letters. Mm-hmm. He's just like holding up one finger, 5 fingers, 10 fingers and stuff. And it's just like people are holding up their bingo cards. It's weird. And then Chris looks at Rose and he's like, you know what? I'm sorry. I need to go.
Yeah.
Good call.
So she's like, what? Like, you need to go, not we need to go. And he's like, you can come if you want. And she's just like, damn. Okay, so it's just like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I have to leave. And at this point, the camera on Rose's dad, who's leading bingo, pans back. And we see that he is up on the gazebo standing next to a big portrait of Chris.
What the
And he's like holding his hands up and holding his hands up. And everybody's like holding up their bingo cards and stuff. And then finally, he holds up his 10 fingers, right? And then the old blind guy, Jim, holds up his bingo like he just won. Okay, we don't hear any of this happening.
Yeah.
It's just music going on while it's happening. But apparently, the blind guy just won the game of bingo. And everybody's clapping for him like, yeah, yeah. And he's like nodding his head like, thank you, thank you. So Chris and Rose they're having this argument and they're talking. And Chris is like, he starts telling her about the night that his mom died. Because now he's thinking about it all the time since Missy brought it up. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I learned later that she actually survived the initial hit. And Rose is like, what? And he's like, yeah, so she was actually laying there by the side of the road in the cold, like hanging on. Mm-hmm. And I just watched TV. I just sat there and watched TV. And she was out there laying there alive. There was time. There was time for her to make it if someone was looking for her. But nobody was looking for her because I did nothing.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, shit. So he totally blames himself for his mom's death. She's just laying there by the side of the road with nobody looking for her. And he's just crying. And he's like, you're all I got, okay? And you know what? No, I'm not going to just leave you here. All right, And she's like, you know what? Let's go home. And he's like, what, really? And she's like, yeah, you know what? It's fine. I'll just make something up and we'll just leave tonight. And he's like, I love you. She's like, I love you too, babe. So, they're all stronger than ever. Now they're going back to the house and all the party guests are leaving. And everybody's like, oh, it was wonderful to meet you, Chris. Good night. And he's like, yeah, okay. And, the servants, they're all smiling at him, all big and weird. And then the parents are being all creepy. And then the brother is standing there and he's like strumming on a little ukulele and he's all creepy. So all the party guests are gone. It's just the family and the servants. And they all walk into the house. Upstairs, Chris actually sends the photo that he took of Logan to his buddy Rod. Uh-huh. Rod looks at the photo and immediately recognizes the guy. He's like, oh yeah, that's Dre. That's Andre, so-and-so. Remember he used to be so-and-so's boyfriend, And he's like, yeah, oh man, that is where I knew him from. I knew he looked familiar, man. And he's like, yeah, dude. All of a sudden he was just gone. Well, I guess we found where he is. So he's like, yeah, man, it's weird too. Like, man, the lady he was here at this party with was easily like 30 years older than him. And then Rod just goes, sex slave! And then they get cut off. And he's like, Rod? Hello? And Rod on the other end is like, Chris!
Yeah.
Chris! So then Chris just starts packing his bag. Like, he is leaving tonight. Him and Rose, they're going. And then he looks over and he sees this open closet. I think they showed the open closet earlier as maybe a foreshadowing thing, but, screw it. So he, like, goes into the closet. And he's, like, looking around, and he finds this red box. And he opens it up, and there's photos inside. He's looking through it, and it's, like, childhood photos of Rose, up on stage accepting awards and stuff. And he keeps passing through the photos, and she's getting older in the pictures. Then he finds one of her and this black dude, like her boyfriend.
Oh.
And he's like, what? Like, I thought I was her first black boyfriend. And you realize, well, that was never said.
Uh-huh.
So, it's not that weird. Then he goes to the next photo. It's her and another black guy. He goes to the next photo. It's her and another black guy.
Ew.
He goes to the next photo. It's her and the groundskeeper.
Oh, shit.
He flips to the next photo, and it's her and the maid.
Oh, God.
Oh, my
Yeah.
God.
Okay?
So she's like a fish hook.
Yeah, it's
Jeez.
time to go.
And Chris is like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And he, like, puts the pictures back in the box, and he gets up, and he turns around, and Rose is standing there. And she's like, what's up? And he's like, you ready to go? And she's like, yeah, I'm just about ready, but, I'm going to have to go do this and that first. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm just going to put the bags in the car. You got the keys, babe?
Yeah, there you go.
And she's like, yeah, sure, she's looking through her purse and stuff.
I'm
She can't-
creeped out.
She can't find the keys. And he's like, what's the matter? Can't find the keys, babe? And she's like, yeah, I know they're here. And he's like, yeah, come on. I just want to go put the bags in the car, for real. That's just what I'm trying to do. And she's like, I'll find them. Let's go downstairs. So they go downstairs. And then her brother, Jeremy, that guy that I hate, is like leaning up against the front door with a lacrosse stick in his hands. And he's like flipping it. Like, he's up to no good. Chris sees him and he's just like, oh, man. And then the mom walks in and she's like, you're not leaving, are you guys? And Rose is like, yeah, his dog is, sick and he needs to be at the vet early in the morning. And the mom's like, oh, that's too bad. I'm so sorry to hear that. And he looks over to the right and there's her dad standing there, like staring into the fire. And then Chris is like, Rose, keys. And he's looking at all the rest of her family, and they all kind of like, they start maybe closing in on him a little bit. And then the dad, he's like, he's still staring at the fire, and he just goes, Chris, what is your purpose?
Oh, jeez.
And Chris is just like, oh, God. What do you mean? In life, what is your purpose? There's something about fire that, and he gets a little existential and stuff, and he's like, we are all just gods in cocoons. And then Chris is like, yeah, that's great. Okay. And he turns around, and then the brother swings the lacrosse stick at him.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to knock him out. Chris actually dodges. Okay. And he's like, what the fuck, man? And then the mom is like, Jeremy, what are you doing? And Jeremy's like, oh, come on. I didn't do anything. It's fine. It's no big deal. Jeez. And then Chris is like, yeah, Rose, how about them keys? She's like, oh, you know what? Okay, I'm looking. And she's going through her purse. And then she just stops and looks at him, holds up the keys, and goes, I can't really give you the keys, can you? Don't you, babe? And he's like, yeah, all right. And then him and the brother attack each other. He's trying to get out through the house, and the brother's trying to take him down. And then all of a sudden, the mom just taps on the teacup with her spoon, and Chris just falls backwards.
Damn it.
So it's like a hypnosis trigger. And he just hits the ground like a board.
Yeah. This is a good movie.
Yeah. And then he's, from his point of view, he's down in the sunken place again. And then they're looking over him. They're looking, and we just see them through the little window in space, right? And the mom is like, you know what? Okay, you get his feet, and let's carry him downstairs, all right? And then Rose looks over him, and we just see the tiny little Rose in the window that's very far away now, and she just goes, Chris, you were one of my favorites. And then the brother's like, "Hey, you hear that, Chris? That's great." So then it cuts to Rod, his TSA buddy. He's like trying to call him. There's no answer. Like, he does it a few times over and over. And he's the one watching his dog. So like, the dog's like, "Mm." And then Rod's like, "Yeah, me too, boy. Me too." And then Rod actually Googles the real name of Logan. Okay, the guy whose picture Chris sent him.
Uh-huh.
So he Googles him and he's like, oh, he finds him. He's a missing person. Okay, he's been missing for 6 months. Andre so-and-so, missing. Does anybody know where he is? Blah, blah, blah. Chris wakes up in the basement. And, you're expecting this, like, disgusting room, torture room. And it's, like, real nice. Like wood paneling. It's like a nice mahogany office.
Yeah.
But it's a game room. It's got, like, a table tennis table and foosball table, and he is strapped down, but he's strapped down to like a nice leather chair. So Chris is looking around the room, and in front of him there's this old-timey television set, and up above it is a big old deer head on the wall. And big antlers. So he's looking at the looking around the room, and then the TV turns on, and it's this old, like, grainy video starts playing. And this old man, this really nice old man, he looks out of the screen and he just says, "Hello." And he's really nice and warm. Okay. And he's like, "Yeah, my name is Roman Armitage." He's the grandfather, the runner. Wow. He's like, "And if you're watching this, you have been chosen. Okay, you have been chosen because of your physical advantages. Okay, and through your physical advantage and our determination, we are going to make something beautiful. Okay, and through the coagula process, it's a process that I've been working on for years, and finally it has been perfected by my own flesh and blood." And then he like walks out in front of his house, and you see the mom and the dad and then the two kids, but they're really, really young. And he's like, "So here we are. We're all working together. We're all working towards this goal. And for you, my friend, it is much better if you don't fight it. Okay? Don't fight the coagula process." And then he goes, "Behold the coagula." And then the rest of the family is just like smiling and waving into the camera. And then across the screen, just show the words, "Behold the coagula." Okay? And then right after that video ends, it's just a video of the teacup being stirred. And then he falls asleep. Okay? It's like the hypnotic suggestion, like all that. It just puts him out every time the teacup gets stirred. So then it cuts to Rod, and he has gone to the police. And he's sitting there talking to this black cop lady who's like, you can tell she's tough, okay? Yeah. And she's like, "Okay, so who are you?" She's a detective. And he's like, "My name is Rod. I'm a TSA agent, blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "Okay, Rod from the TSA. Yeah, I get it. What the hell's going on?" He's like, "I'm looking for my friend Chris. He's been missing for 3 days, okay? And, he left 2 days ago with his girlfriend, okay, Rose. She's white." And, like, he's expecting, like, something from the cop, and the cop's just like, "Uh-huh." And he's like, "He sent me a picture of this guy, Dre, okay? And he's been missing for, like, 6 months, okay? And, well, look here. He's missing." And shows her the photo. And she's like, "Wow. Nice clothes he's wearing." Like, "Yeah, well, he's a sex slave of some some lady who's like 30 years older than him." And she goes, "Oh, okay, well, that explains the clothes." So she's not buying it, And he's like, I'm telling you, I think that these people have been abducting black people and brainwashing them. Okay? And she's like, hang on a second. And he's like, okay. She leaves and comes back with like 2 big, strong man cops. And they're just standing behind her. And she's like, go on. And he's like, okay, so as I was saying, I think they're abducting black people and they're brainwashing them, because this lady, she's using hypnosis, okay? And, so really, okay, so that's pretty much it. So what's our next move? And then all three of the cops just start laughing their asses off. Mm-hmm. And she's like, you know what, I'll tell you, it is just never a dull moment or some shit. And they just laugh him right out of the station. So he just leaves. They won't help him. Even though he has a picture of somebody who's been missing for 6 months. Okay? Yeah. So then he is alone at home. And he's got like a piece of paper. And he's like got notes written all over it. And he's like drawing lines and making connections and everything. He's doing the work. So then he tries to call Chris again. And then Rose answers the phone. And he's like, wait, what? Rose. She's like, yeah, hey, hi, Rod. And he's like, where is Chris? Where is Chris? She's like, he left. He left 2 days ago. He was all pissed off. He got in a cab and he just left. He actually left his phone here. And she starts like fake crying. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, okay. Can you tell me what cab company he left in? She's like, I'm sorry, I really don't really remember. I'm just so confused. And she starts crying. And he's like, yeah, you're confused. Okay. Yeah, I'm confused too. You know what? Hold on a minute, will you? And she's like, okay. And then he puts the call on hold and he's like, you lying bitch. And then the whole theater just laughs. And he starts recording the phone call. He gets back on and he's like, yeah, so, I know that your mama hypnotized him. And she's like, you know what, Rod? Just stop. He's like, what? She's like, you know what is going on here between you and me. I know that you want me. And he's like, what? No, I don't want you. No. She's like, I know you think about fucking me, Rod. And he's like, no, I swear. No, not at all. Okay, you know what? God damn it. All right. Okay, I gotta go. And he hangs up the phone and he just goes, she is a genius. And then she hangs up Chris's phone and then the camera pans over and her whole family is just standing there watching her. So then we come back to Chris and he's like awake in the chair again. And then the TV comes on again. But now on the TV is the old blind man Jim. Mm-hmm. Stephen Root. But he is in a hospital gown and he's laying on a bed and his head has been shaved. And he's like, hello. And Chris is just standing there. He's just sitting in the chair strapped to it, just watching the TV. And the guy's like, you can say hello. I can hear you, Chris. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, okay. Why? What's going on? And the guy's like, well, let me explain the process to you. The hypnotism, okay, that Missy did, that's phase 1. All right? And, just to lay the groundwork. Now, phase 2, that's the mental preparation. That's what's happening to you right now. All right? And he's like, yeah, okay. Now, phase 3, that's the transplantation. Okay? And, so, and you're like, I was like, oh, okay. He's being harvested. His eyes are being harvested, for this blind dude. That's the whole thing here. And he's like, yeah, but definitely, there is a part of your brain, though, that actually connects all the nerves in your body and everything like that. That part has to stay. So there is actually going to be a little bit of you that is still going to be alive, okay? But you're going to be living your life as a passenger in, what is it that Missy calls it? And then Chris goes, the sunken place. And he's like, yeah, that's where you'll be living out the rest of your existence. Jesus. And he's like, oh. And then Chris gets flashbacks of the maid, like staring off into space and like kind of wigging out. And then the groundskeeper, like staring at him all funny. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then he also gets a flashback of when he flashed the camera into Logan's eyes and Logan's nose started bleeding and stuff. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, okay. So you're going to be me. And old Jim is like, yep, I'm going to be you. That's right. So okay, yeah, that's great, but why us? All right? Why black people? And he's like, well, I don't really know, man. Some people, they just want to be stronger. They want to be faster. Some of them want to be cooler. And right then, he's like, he gets a flashback of the guy saying, well, black is back in fashion. And it's like, oh, okay. He's like, but, I really don't care about any of that, Chris. What I want is your eyes. Okay? I want to see through your eyes. I want to see what you see. And he's like, okay. And then the whole time he's talking to him, he's like gripping the armrests of the chair. And he's been gripping it so hard that he has kind of torn through the leather a little bit. And the stuffing is poking out a little bit. Mm-hmm. Right? And he like pulls a little bit of it out. And he's just kind of like rolling it in his fingers. And then the teacup comes on. Or he was rolling in his fingers during the conversation with the guy. Anyway, then the teacup comes on, and then he goes to sleep. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now we cut to another part of the basement, which is this super clean surgery room. And there's the dad, all scrubbed up, and he is prepping old Jim for surgery. Jim was like in the next room.
Jeez.
Okay? And the son is scrubbed up, and he's assisting. He like holds open the tools for the dad, who is this brilliant neurosurgeon. And then he starts cutting into the scalp of Jim and removes it and throws it into the trash can. And I was like, oh, he's transplanting brains.
Mm-hmm.
He's not taking his eyes. Okay, I get it now. All right. He's going to put old Jim's brain into Chris's body.
Yeah.
So he throws his scalp in the trash. And he's like zzz, cutting into the skull. You see the skull and everything. And then he's like, okay, go get him. Go get Chris. So now the son goes into the room to get Chris. And Chris is asleep, of course, because the teacup came on. And he like undoes his buckles and everything. And he turns around to like pull the wheelchair over. And then you just see Chris's black hand pick up a bocce ball in the room. And then the son turns around and just gets socked right in the fucking face with the ball. Okay? Just like crack. Okay? And the whole theater just like cheered. Okay? And Chris just like hits him like maybe one or two more times with the ball. And then he pulls some of the chair cotton out of his ears. I don't know how he was able to lean his head down to stuff the cotton into his ears, but that is how he didn't hear the teacup stirring. So, he's looking over the body of the son, and he pulls the cotton out of his ears, and then he just throws it onto the son. And then he's leaving, and the dad is in there doing the surgery, and he's like, Jeremy? Jeremy? And he didn't hear anything, so he goes to investigate. So he's walking down the hallway, and then all of a sudden around the corner, Chris shows up with the deer head and just stabs the dad with the antlers.
Shit.
She's like, stabs him and runs him into the wall. Okay, there's blood everywhere. The whole theater just cheering more. It's even bigger this time. So then Chris, he's like, he runs upstairs. He gets out of the basement, and he's like making his escape. Mm-hmm. Okay? And he hears this humming. And he comes into the kitchen, and there's the maid. And she's just sitting there, and then she looks up at him, and she gets this like horrified look on her face like, oh my God. And then she just runs. Like, we don't know what she's running to go and do. Okay? And then Chris, he finds his phone, picks it up, and he's walking, and then he runs into the mom. He's standing in front of the mom, and in between them is the coffee table with a fucking teacup on it. And he's looking at the teacup, and then she's looking at the teacup. And they're both staring at it, and then somebody in the theater just goes, kick that fucking cup. And then they both just run for the cup, and he does end up smashing it off of the table.
Oh, sweet.
So now they start fighting. And she picks up a letter opener, and she raises it over her head to stab him, and all he does is just put his hand up, and he just takes it right through the palm.
Oh, shit.
Okay? And it's like, he's like dead-eyed when he does it. Like, he's like at his wit's end. He is okay with getting stabbed in the hand. So now the knife is like stuck in his hand. So now he's fighting her again and stuff. And he ends up pulling the letter opener out and just stabbing her in the face. We don't actually get to see the face stabbing, but, his hand goes up and down a few times, and then the crowd cheered again. So now he's okay. He can leave. He goes to the front door, and then the front door gets kicked shut from behind him. And he turns around, and the son is back. And he's all bloody in the face. And he's like, "You motherfucker!" And he like grabs him and puts him in a headlock, and he's choking him out and stuff. And then Chris keeps reaching for the doorknob. He keeps reaching for the door and opening it a little bit, and then the son will just kick it shut again. And now this time, he does this one more time. Opens up the door, the son's foot kicks it shut, and then Chris drives the letter opener right down into the guy's knee.
Nice.
So then he falls, and Chris just stomps down on his face. We don't get to see the face. We just get to see Chris stomping it.
Yeah.
But he stomps it and stomps it and stomps it over and over, and the crowd is just going wild. So then he reaches down into Jeremy's pockets and he pulls out his car keys. At this point, it cuts to Rose, who is just sitting in her room, and she's like wearing like nice, neat, clean clothes now, and her hair is pulled back in a clean ponytail, and she's eating cereal with milk in her bedroom, and the camera pans back, and we see her wall behind her, and it's covered in the framed photos of her and all of the different black people that she has fished in for the family. She's online Googling top NCAA prospects. She's like looking at like rich basketball players and stuff, people who are like physically superior.
Yeah.
So then Chris has the keys, and he goes outside and finds Jeremy's car, which is a white Porsche, if you'll remember from the beginning of the film. So he gets in the car, and, he's about to drive away, and he looks in the passenger seat, and there's this big, black, weird helmet. It's the same helmet the guy was wearing that took down the dude in the beginning. So he starts driving away from the house, and he calls 911. And they're like, 911? He's like, "Yeah, I was being held hostage, blah, blah, blah." And then he hits the maid with the car. She, like, jumped in front of the car.
Jesus.
Okay? So he runs over her, and then he stops. He hangs up the phone, and then he looks behind him, and there is this young black woman laying in the side of the road, just got hit by a car. Oh. So he's flashing back to his mother, and he flashes back to him sitting there watching TV and doing nothing.
Uh-huh.
So then he's like looking in the rearview mirror, and he just sees her laying there in the road in the light from the brake lights. And he's like, "Ugh." And the whole theater is just like, "No, man." And he's like, "Oh, God, I got to help her." Okay, so he gets out, and he picks her up, and he puts her into the passenger seat of the car, and he starts driving away. And right then, Rose comes out of the house with a rifle, and she just fires at the car, and then she just yells out, "Grandma!" And then the car is driving, and inside, Chris is driving, and then he looks over at the maid, and she like leans up. She just got hit by a car. Uh-huh. Okay, so she's all punch drunk and stuff, and she like turns around and looks at him, and then she pulls her wig off, and she's got this giant, ugly scar across her forehead, like just above what would be her hairline.
Yeah.
And then she just screams at him, "You ruined my house!" And it's the grandma. It's her brain in this maid's body.
Okay.
So then she starts slapping at him, and he's like, trying to fight her off, and then he runs the car right into a tree. Boom! Mm-hmm. Okay? It ends up killing her. So he's like getting out, and Rose, she's walking towards the car, shooting this rifle. And then she turns to her right. We see the groundskeeper, and she just goes, "Get him, Grandpa." And then the grandpa, or the groundskeeper, just starts running at full speed because he was an Olympic runner. And that's what he was doing that night. He's trying to relive his old glory days because that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to run fast again.
Oh.
Yeah. So he starts attacking Chris, and he's on top of him, and he's punching him and stuff. And then Chris pulls out his cell phone and flashes it into the dude's eyes. And then the guy stops attacking him. And he's got that sparkly look in his eyes, the same sparkly look that he saw in Logan's eyes for a second. And then the groundskeeper stands up, and he looks at Rose, who's holding the rifle. And he goes, "Let me do it. I'll kill him. So she's like, okay, Grandpa, and hands him the rifle, and then he just points it at her and shoots her.
Oh, nice.
And you're like, yeah, yeah. The whole theater goes crazy for this, right? And then he immediately puts the rifle underneath his chin and blows his own brains out.
Oh.
And then the theater went, oh. So now Chris is looking and he sees that Rose is actually still alive. So then he goes over to her and he leans down over her and she's like, oh, Chris, it's me. You know what? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Chris. I love you. I love you, Chris. And he just like nods his head. He's like nodding, like, yeah, I know. And then he just puts his hands around her neck and starts choking her. And he's choking her. And she's like, turning blue. But then she just starts smiling at him, like a real big smile. And then he just stops choking her. Like, okay, it worked. Like, I'm not going to kill you. I do kind of love you. I don't know what's going to happen here, but I just can't kill you. Mm-hmm. He doesn't say any of this. He's silent this whole time.
Yeah.
But right then, there are police lights in the distance. And he looks over, he's looking at the police lights, and then he looks down at the ground, sees the dead housekeeper, sees the dead groundskeeper. Here is this dying white girl that he is on top of with his hands around her neck.
Yeah.
And then the whole theater's like, oh, shit! And he's like, oh, great. Like he's definitely going to be going down for this, right? And then the door opens up of the cop car, and we see the insignia on the door is TSA. And then Rod gets out.
Oh, fuck yeah.
And there is a huge applause. So Rod goes over and gets him. He's like, come on, man. We got to get you out of here. Let's go. And he's like walking him to the car. And as he's doing that, he's like, man, I told you not to go in those white people's house, man. I told you that. And Chris is like, man, how did you find me? And then Rod looks at him. He's like, man, I'm TS motherfucking A. He's like, we handle shit. Consider this shit handled. All right? And then he just drives away. And then Rose is just, the final shot we see is Rose just like laying there, looking at the car driving away, and just fucking dying. And then across the screen, we just see the big words, get out. And there is a absolute and full theater clap.
Yeah.
And then the credits roll, baby. And everybody got up and they're all walking down the stairs just like, everybody was like, that was good. That was good. Everybody loved this film, man.
Yeah. I love it too.
Yeah. So, I checked for stingers. There were none. So I was like, man, I have got to find the men's room. And everything turned out okay.
All right.
So there you go. There you have it. Get Out on Movies with Ron. What do you think, man?
Good job.
It was good.
I love how it was all connected to that Olympic runner.
Yeah, man.
I thought that was especially, I don't know, a good touch.
Hell yeah. And you know what? The fact that the maid was the grandma and the Olympic runner was the groundskeeper, I should have figured that out once I learned that they were going to put blind Jim's brain into Chris's body, but it still caught me by surprise. Yeah. Oh, that's the grandma. Oh, that's why he was running.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a good movie, man.
Why were they so weird then?
Because they were old white people not knowing how to talk to a young black guy.
All right. That's fucked up.
Yeah.
So having the cell phone flash at them, giving them
it brought
like a moment of clarity.
It brought the host out of the sunken place for a minute.
Right. Does that mean, what's the name of the guy at the party?
Logan. When Logan was screaming at him, get out, get the fuck out, he was warning him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Good movie.
Yeah, man.
I like it.
Yeah, I liked it too.
Hey, people, leave us some reviews. If you're on that iTunes, iOS, hit the ratings tab. Say whatever you want. I want to read some reviews on the show.
Yeah, here we go, guys. Come on.
All right, it's been fun.
All right, love you guys.
Take care.
Movies with Ron.